Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you're tuning in. My name is Cdale, Enick, and you are listening to the Stones Bones podcast. Now, this has been an interesting, very interesting year, and we are starting the podcast out, and I was very, very excited, still very, very excited about the podcast. And it's getting really interesting because I'm able to see you guys grow on the podcasting platforms and be able to see you guys, tracking you guys on Facebook and see who's watching. Some people that are following us from Fallen Hour Radio has transferred over to the Stones Bones podcast, which is really, really awesome. And quite a few of you guys also listening to us at Fallen Hour Radio. And it's getting exciting. It's been like a really, really cool learning experience, and I'm really happy to work on this podcast, and it's just really interesting because some of these stones I've come across and some of these things that I am researching, it's just a really interesting thing to research. And I'm sure I'll be very knowledgeable at the peak of this as I'm going forward and researching these stones and some of their properties. That being said, I am hoping to go more extensive on research on these stones and possibly start recording these a little earlier so I can get some more information for you guys and do some better editing for you guys at home, for you guys watching on Facebook, watching on YouTube, and things of that nature. That being said, if you guys are watching us on Facebook, watching me on YouTube, make sure you go to the Stones, search Stones and Bones, whether that be an Apple Podcast, Alexa, Anchor, Radio Public, and you guys will be able to find the podcast on the go. You guys can listen to me in your car, listen to me at work, listen to me wherever you are. And if you guys are also listening and you guys have just found me on whether that be a podcasting platform, Apple Podcasts, make sure you go to Facebook and search Stones Bones Billings, or go to YouTube and search Stones Bones Billings, or even Google for that matter, and you guys will be able to find the video version of this podcast, and you guys will be able to see what I'm talking about in real time as I am sitting here holding these and talking about these stones. And this is a really interesting market because, I mean, there is so many stones out there, so many different minerals and things we can get into, and so many ways that people use these stones and these minerals, and it's really, really interesting. And I am hoping that the lighting on me also is doing good, because I've had some trouble. Like, I looked way too bright and things of that nature. I tried adjusting my camera. It's just not a really good time to shoot. It's been a interesting podcast so far. It's the second time recording now, but we are going forward, and I hope you guys enjoy the podcast. Now, I am talking about perhaps one of the most popular stones, especially in culture. And like I mentioned in the past podcast, every time I research a stone, every time I go in and type in whether that be pyrite in history, or the history behind pyrite, how it was used in history and different cultures around the world, and what are some of the logistics of the stones or minerals, the first people to pop up, the first cultures to pop up is always either the Greeks, the Romans, the Assyrians, the Egyptians, and these are the ones that are most notably noted in these writings, especially when people are writing about stones. They have to reference those cultures because they were really the pioneers of really getting down to using certain stones and certain minerals, and it's really interesting. That being said, this is also, I believe, this is also a Greek mineral, and it was named also after fire, and the Greek word for fire was pyre, and the reason they named it pyre, and that's how we get pyrite today, is because when they struck it with iron, it would actually create a spark. And pyrite was used prehistorically. It was prehistorically used also to start fires. And people, they somehow figured out that this stone is one of the stones that is used to start fires. And they've been using pyrite to start fires for thousands of years. Really interesting. And this is a mineral and a crystal. Also, there's so many ways that this is grown and found in its natural state. And pyrite crystallizes in many ways, in clusters, everything from clusters to right angles, and sometimes almost cubular. I also have some cubes that Crystal sent me home with that I'll be able to sell. To you guys. Hopefully, I am hoping that I'm able to go live sometime this week. It's been a really hectic week for me, but we are going to be going live hopefully very, very soon. And I went live about a week ago, and you guys were really, really supportive of that. And you guys are watching the live on Instagram and Facebook. And there was somebody that asked me also on the live stream that if we had agate, and which I did. I went to Billings, and I told Crystal, I said, a woman wants agate. So she sent me home with Montana agate and a couple of other pieces of agate as well. And that being said, this one is very interesting. And I have some cubes, and these are found in so many different ways around the world. They're crystallized. They're found in large deposits around the world. They're mined in the United States as well. And it was first reported by a physician, and his name was Pedanius. I'm hoping I'm saying his name right, Pedanius. And he was a Greek physician. He was a pharmacologist and a botanist, and also he was an author. And the cool thing about this guy is he authored one of the most famous encyclopedias, and you guys can Google it. It's called De Materia. It was a 5-volume Greek encyclopedia about herbal medicine. And this was the man who actually first reported this, and this was first reported in 50 AD, Pyrite. And he was totally into all this laying the groundwork for all these minerals and all these herbs and things of that nature. Like I mentioned, made a 5-volume encyclopedia, and this was and that encyclopedia was used for many years. De Materia was widely popular and used for more than 1,500 years, and people use it also still until this day. And it's something that is referenced, and he really laid the groundwork for this sort of thing to be really taught and wrote about. That being said, this was one of his almost like a discovery, but he was the first one to actually note this, and being cited as being the most notable person to recognize the stone for its uses. And the cool thing, Pedanius, he was widely known. And this guy was a physician in the Roman army, and he was a really interesting figure. I was doing some research on him last night, and I was trying to get as much information as I could about him and try to get this out in the podcast. And he's just a really interesting figure. And I'm sure that we'll be finding some more of him in coming podcasts, especially with a lot of other stones that were found and reported in the Greek culture, or the Roman culture, excuse me. And the cool thing about pyrite was it was used for jewelry pieces in the Greek culture, the Roman cultures, and here is a new one. The Incas also used these in their jewelry. And today it's more of an ornamental stone. There's a reason for that. It's a sulfide mineral. And this is also, just like I mentioned in one of the last podcasts, we're talking about malachite, how that is probably possibly a bad stone to get wet, because in its natural state it becomes very, very toxic and poisonous to the human body. And the same is with pyrite. This is also another stone you don't want to get wet. You don't want to be placing this in the bathroom. You don't want to be putting this into water or anything like that and drinking it. And you don't want to, especially do not want to ingest this. And this was used widely for pins, earrings, and amulets. The Greeks used this as jewelry. It's not so popular today. This was popular in the Victorian Britain. Pyrite was used, and it's not so widely popular today to be used as a piece of jewelry. But there are accounts in the world today that people actually do carve these into jewelry and sell them. And really cool thing to buy. But they are also a very brittle stone. I believe they are a number 6 or a number 6.5 on the hardness scale. So they're really hard to carve. You got to carve them very, very finely. You got to carve them very, very slowly. And it's just one of those stones that are very brittle. I think it's a 5 or a 6, something like that. And Incas use pyrite tablets as mirrors, and this is just another cool thing about the Incas. And they actually use, and I mean, I think they portrayed this also in some of the movies. And you see these guys walking around with these tablets, and those things were used for mirrors. And some of the engineering that went on back then, some of the creativity that went on back then. I mean, the Greeks using using other stones as windows and things of that nature, like selenite, putting that inside of a window and inside of a wall and making a window inside their house. The Incas using pyrite as a mirror because it's highly reflective, especially when it's polished, and it's just a really, really cool stone, a really, really pretty stone, and it's really, really shiny. And for many of you who know this as fool's gold, you are not wrong. This was actually deemed as fool's gold when prospectors used to mistake it for actual gold when they were mining, and that is where it gets its name, fool's gold. And I was in the shop when I first saw pyrite, and I wasn't used to it being named pyrite. And I went in there and I was thinking, I was like, is that fool's gold? Because I remember being a kid and growing up in school, and someone brought some of this to school, and I for sure this was gold to me, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's gold. And sure enough, it's fool's gold, and widely mistaken for actual gold. And the cool thing also about, I mean, we were mentioning in some of the past podcasts as well, is how these were linked to different signs. So if you guys are any of the fire signs, there's 3 fire signs. This is linked to the Aries, linked to the Leo, Sagittarius, and so you guys, if you guys are born in those months and you guys with Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, you guys can actually adopt these as your stone and use these. And I know a lot of people use these also in their metaphysical practices and things of that nature. It is believed to stabilize your energy, bring a calmness to your home, and also said to be a money stone. And there's no surprise there. This is a really, really nice color, gold, shiny. And I've read stories online also about people putting this inside their home as an ornament, and they believe that it brings them calmness and calms their mood and stabilizes their energy and things of that nature. That being said, large amounts of pyrite are found in. So if you guys are wondering where also you guys can find this around the world, this is a very rich stone found around the world. Very, very rich, especially in the United States. It's found in Rio Tinto, Spain. Large crystals found on the island Elba in Italy, mined in Vermont, New York, and Pennsylvania. So it just goes to show that this is, and these aren't even the only places that this is found. These are found all around the world, and it's a really interesting stone to find. And pyrite is usually found with other sulfides or oxides in quartz veins, sedimentary rock, and metamorphic rocks, and in coal beds. So it's not uncommon for coal miners to come across this in their finds, or if they're mining underground, they actually come across fool's gold quite a lot. That is why the prospectors back then would also find these, and they still find it to this day. And pyrite, just like I mentioned with, I believe we were talking about, what was it now? We were talking about one of these other stones. Anyways, this is also used in production of certain things in industries, and it is widely used. It was actually widely used. I don't believe they still do this to this day, but it was widely used for production of sulfur and sulfuric acid, and that is kind of interesting as well. And a couple more healing properties for you guys, because I know you guys are really into these. It's a protection stone, protects against negative energy. Many people believe this, and this is also said to be the stone of luck. And it encourages you to follow your dreams. And it's kind of almost ironic, because this was widely mistaken for gold. And it's almost like it was striving to be gold in its natural state. That being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. I was trying to get this organized a lot sooner than I did. But I am hoping I get another podcast out here very, very soon. If you guys are on Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, make sure you guys follow us on those platforms. I will be releasing exclusive content on those podcasting platforms. By that I mean I will be giving some inside tips on how to use these and things of that nature. Stuff I will not be putting on video, just because that I can get up in the morning and actually just record this on my phone or on my mic and just put it out right away and skip the editing and things of that nature. But every Tuesday, there will be a new episode of the Stones and Bones podcast. I am very, very late today, and I apologize. And next week will be much, much earlier. And I'm not sure exactly what I'll be talking about next week. I believe that I have to go and recirculate my inventory and get some new inventory and give you guys a new podcast next week. That being said, make sure you visit us at stones-bones.com. Go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, Breaker, Castbox, and search Stones and Bones. Find the podcast there. If you guys are on the podcasting platforms, make sure you go to YouTube and search Stones and Bones Billings, and on Facebook, Stones and Bones Billings. That being said, my name is Cdale, Enick, and you are listening to the Stones and Bones podcast.